our webinar. We are going to get started here in just 1 minute, so go ahead and get logged in. And just for anyone who is joining, just to let you know, we are also restreaming across YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So if you also are on there, you can be joining as well. Alrighty, well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Melissa Russell, and I am with Wallarm. I'm going to be your host for today. I would like to start off by welcoming everybody to the API Security Right at the Edge and introduce our speakers. Our first speaker will be Rob Roskin, who is the Principal Solutions Architect with Lumen. Joining him will be our VP of Partnerships, Adi Lavi. And then finally, we'll have our speaker, Alex Diaz, who is the VP of Security Solutions. Before we get started on the presentation, I did want to let everyone know that we are recording this session and can make the slides available afterwards. For those of you who are on our LinkedIn channel, I will put a link to the Zoom registration so you can put that on there. Otherwise, at this point, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Rob. Rob, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. And welcome, everyone. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on CDN and kind of how we all got here. Go a little bit into our next generation platform, and then pass it over to Adi to go more into depth about Wallarm. So to get started, before there was a CDN, if you were going to Yahoo in 1993, you were going directly to Yahoo's servers. And every request, even if everybody was looking for the same object, would go all the way back to the Yahoo servers. So we figured out that we should put a series of caching servers in front of those servers. And this led to an amazing amount of scale and performance. Yahoo, if it wasn't a busy day for them, wasn't having a bunch of empty hardware sitting around. They were renting it from companies like us when they needed it and didn't need it. And when they didn't need it, they weren't paying for it. So this was all going really great and people liked it. So we started doing more of it, and we added more things to the list of functionality that a CDN can provide. Application acceleration, as you see here, meaning that the app itself will be faster, be it through TCP improvements or other acceleration methods. Application security, so you can weed out the bad guys before they're coming to your origin. Content optimization, so that things look better on mobile or on desktop. And business logic, things like if the person is in England, either allow or deny them to play that video. So from here, we then ended up with some challenges. Every CDN handled this differently. So when you were writing code, you were writing it across 4 different places, and you're writing it in 4 different ways. And it was very hard to keep up and to do multi-CDN because you were always writing to more things. We weren't in any CI/CD pipelines. It wasn't automatic in any way, and there was very little visibility. CDNs were kind of a black box when this was going on. So we decided to fix it, and we now give developers direct access to the CDN configuration files. You can put them in GitHub, any of those kind of things. And you can interact with the CDN the same way you interact with your apps, and integrate it into the CI/CD pipelines, which really makes it a lot easier on the developers, and it's kind of write once and use everywhere. So first, I want to tell you a little bit about our modular architecture. What I mean by that is that if you see the web traffic on the left and our origin on the right, we have a series of what I call building blocks that you can use and either activate or leave alone. Things like caching, bot management, next-gen WAF and API security. This is image optimization. And then this customer actually brought their own container as well. And so these modules, you can move them around. You can take them in and out as your performance needs or your security needs change. So when we have all of that, we then added platform agnostic development. You can use Lumen's private cloud to power all of your apps on the internet, or if you want to, you can add any of these public clouds to the mix. And that way, if there are certain regions or certain densities that you need, we can work across any of these clouds. Built for developers, we talked a little bit about this, but we offer real-time metrics and logs, as well as real-time user monitoring. So there's a lot of information coming in about what's going on with your application, be it security, performance, any sort of operational monitoring you may need. And as I said before, the workflows are get-backed. So all the configurations are available to you. There's no more black boxes. Next is containerized workloads. And what we mean by that is that everything is in Docker. It's Kubernetes. The dynamic workload shifts anytime that we need it to. We'll get a little more into that, but you can basically deploy the same way you would deploy anywhere else. You can deploy onto the CDN now. And the workload just runs closer to the end users. So if you have your laptop, you can download all those modules, see how it'll run across your laptop, get all the logs, and then be able to push that new configuration directly up to the cloud. And what you're seeing here, excuse me for 1 second. What you're seeing here is a live 24-hour updating of all of our services as they go across the globe. So as users are waking up in North America and then transferring over to Europe and transferring over to Asia, you can see the time zones and the workloads dynamically shifting automatically across the Lumen cloud and multiple public clouds. And lastly, we have our trusted partner ecosystem. These are the different modules that you can put into the mix, and you can take them out and move them around depending on how many hits per million hits you want, and all sorts of options here. But most importantly here is going to be Wallarm. So I'm going to pass it over to Adi to talk a little more about that.
Great. Thank you, Rob. Good stuff. So why do we care? So here we have some data provided by our friends at Lumen. So you can see on the left that 35% more attacks were mitigated last year. In the middle, you see that 28% of multi-vector mitigation involved more complex attacks. And then on the right, you see that 55% of companies have discovered some sort of API vulnerabilities. So the takeaway here is that we see more attacks, the attacks are more complex, and we see a new attack vector that is on the rise, which is API security. Moving on to the next slide. So how are we helping you guys? Rob? Thank you. So first thing that we do here at Wallarm is we do discover. Obviously, you cannot protect what you're not aware of. So we do have API and application discovery. We basically expose what your customers and the attackers are seeing from the outside. Specifically, if we're talking about API discovery, so we reconstruct the API spec from actual application usage, which basically means that it's very easy for our customers to do API discovery. They don't need to do anything. Actually, they don't need to upload the API spec or schema. We reconstruct the spec from the actual traffic. Then what we do, we compare it with the documentation. So our customers can compare the actual traffic that goes in production with the design and the development, and we flag any mismatches. And then lastly, what we do once we have this like baseline of comparison, we can track changes, right? So any change that we see in the actual traffic, we can alert the customer so they can see if what is that change, right? Was it approved, was not approved, intentional, unintentional, and so forth. So that's how we do API and app discovery. Next, please. Next one is protect. Obviously, once you have the discovery, now you want to protect all your API traffic. And this is something that Wallarm really shines. Our DNA is in pen testing. So we're really good with protection and detection. So the first thing that we support all protocols. So not only REST and the old SOAP, also up and coming protocols like gRPC, GraphQL, and WebSockets. and other. We support all API protocols. The next thing is all threats. So we're talking here about OWASP top 10 API, but not only. We also protect from top 10 applications, API abuse, as well as layer 7 or application DDoS, and some bot detection as well. Lastly, something that we're very proud of and very unique is tuning free. Our detection is based on grammar, and I have a slide to talk about it a little bit later. But what does it mean for you? It means for you that it's very easy to manage our solution and really like close to zero, right? If I say 0 false positives, you're not going to believe me, but it's really, really close to 0 false positives. So very high detection. Next, please. And then lastly, they respond. And basically, we talk here about visibility. So we provide a lot of visibility in our portal. You can drill down to any attacks. You can see insights, and you can do advanced analysis. Another unique feature that we have, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, is active threat verification. But the idea is that we provide an additional layer of value to our customers. If you see here on the right, you see attacks, roughly 120,000 attacks. These are like requests and attacks that we, Wallarm, detected and mitigated. And then you see on the left, 22 incidents. This is the active threat verification, which basically means that layer 1, we stop the attack. And then the layer 2 of value, we actually look to see if the application is vulnerable for this attack. If the application is vulnerable for this attack, then there is a security incident, and we allow our customers, our SOC and security team, to patch, fix, and upgrade that vulnerability. So we don't only protect, we also make your application more secure. And then lastly, we are a cloud native company. We have all the integrations that you can think of: SIEM, SOAR, incident response, and any observability tool. We are an API first company, so we can integrate with any tool. Next. Cool, so let's talk a little bit about how it works. So Rob shared this slide with you guys, right? And he mentioned the building blocks. So I'm gonna zoom into the one in the middle, the next generation WAF and API security, to show you how it works. Next, please. So this is kind of the platform architecture. And basically here you see in the middle, the Wallarm nodes within the building block running on Lumen. So what our customers normally need to do is to deploy these nodes in their infrastructure. But with Lumen, that has already been done for you guys. So it's really like a one-click deployment, and you are deployed on the edge at Lumen. What you see the traffic on the left, you see normal traffic and malicious traffic. The nodes are filtering the traffic in real time with near zero latency, mitigating any malicious requests one by one in real time. And as you can see on the right, only legitimate requests are moving upstream to your application. Above it, you see the Wallarm Cloud Engine, which is basically the SaaS portion of the solution that is managed and maintained by Wallarm. There you have all the portals, all the alerts, and all the integrations that you need for your infrastructure and tools. Now I want to talk about, next please. Now I want to talk about 3 unique features and capabilities that Wallarm has. The first one is the deep API request inspection. So, and response, by the way. So again, we're very proud of our detection capability. One of the features is that we do API request inspection. So as you can see here, for example, there's an API request with a JSON payload. So we parse the JSON payload, and then we can detect the malicious payload within the JSON object. Right, so that is a capability that can be done only when you do deep request inspection. So that's one feature that we have, and again, near zero latency. Obviously, if there's a lot of latency, not a lot of our customers are going to use this solution. Next, please. The second one has to do again with attack detection. So we talked about all the threats that we're already detecting. So how do we do it? We do it in a unique way. One of them is that we do not use any regular expressions, right? If we talk about the log4j vulnerability, some of the customers, companies, they try to detect via the regular expressions. And I read this article that there's like thousands combinations of regular expressions, right? So obviously very difficult to impossible to have all the options. So our detection is not based on regular expressions. We use lib detection library, one of our techniques, and it's basically based on grammar. Hopefully you can understand me, right? We're speaking English, so and you know that I'm not using any bad or slur words. That is kind of how the Wallarm solution works. We understand the protocol, we understand the request, and therefore we can detect and mitigate any malicious request. Next, please. Okay, and that's the last unique feature that I want to talk about. That's the active threat verification. So again, it's an additional, a second layer of value. Not only that we stop the malicious request, we also validate if the application is vulnerable to this type of an attack. If it was just a drive-by attack, so Wallarm stopped it and you're good to go. But if the application is vulnerable, that's an additional layer in value. Now your SOC team, your security team can fix, patch, and upgrade. And now with Wallarm, we are making your application and your API more secure. Next. Cool. So that's kind of my last slide, just to talk about our integration. So again, we support any tool, incident response, SIEM. These are just like the logos, but obviously more tools are available. Code repository, any communication channel, SOAR tool, and any observability tool the customers are using, we integrate with them all. Cool. So that's my last slide, and now we want to go over to the demo, and Alex, you have the floor.
Perfect. Thank you, Alec. That was great. Do you mind if I can share my screen? Yeah, I have a control. Perfect. Well, thank you for having us here. This is going to be the demo on the console. Every time you, if you are planning to start a demo with us, you will have access to the Wallarm console, where you can actually manage all your security requirements with Wallarm. I want to start with API discovery. This is one of the things Adi was talking during his presentation, is how we able to detect automatically all the endpoints you have via the request coming from your end users. So without any need for you to upload the schema directly from the user connections, as your end customers or clients are consuming your APIs, Wallarm is able to map out and create all the endpoints directly from those connections. As you can see here is a post request, and you can see the parameters being included in that request. You can see a password was found in the body of the request. A host was found in the header. If we go into a GET request, you're expecting to see the query itself, and you can see some values assigned to it. Another interesting fact here is if you see this asterisk, Wallarm is doing an analysis on every single parameter and value. So if it sees that 99% of the time this value exists, it will deem this as a mandatory field and is going to be part of a mandatory schema. As you're probably familiar with Swagger, there is a format that could be familiar to what you're seeing right now on the screen. And I'm able to download the schema from here by clicking this button that says download open API specification. That, again, directly from the user connections. If you don't have any documentation, Wallarm is going to document the schema for you. So in a JSON format, that can I just go take and import this into a Swagger editor. In this Swagger editor, you're able to reconstruct the schema directly from that file that was generated by Wallarm. Another thing is important, and how can you leverage this information, is to detect, for example, deprecated endpoint. Let's say you release a new version of your API, which is now version 2, and you are not maintaining that endpoint anymore, and could have, that endpoint can have security concerns. So what you can do is create a rule here, and Wallarm is going to auto-populate that rule, and you can perform any of the actions here. One of them could be just to block that specific request by setting the filtering mode into, for example, blocking. So at that point, that deprecate API endpoint, it won't be available anymore because you are not maintaining. So from a management perspective, it allows you to discover all your shadow APIs, deprecated endpoints, and create documentation if you don't have it. Also, this will be linked to the events I will describe in my next section. But before doing that, what I would like to show you is when you think about an attack or an attacker, the first thing the attacker is going to do is try to discover all your assets, all the assets you have available on the internet, and that could be a potential attack vector. Every single endpoint discovered could be used to attack or affect your applications. In the same way, Wallarm is going to discover all your digital assets, by specifying a subnet or DNS entries. You're able to map out all your domain names and subdomains. You will see your IP addresses and also services. Now, with this information, if I go into vulnerabilities, Wallarm is going to show is going to run a CV and CW database against all those endpoints, and you will see it here as a scanning a vulnerability scanner. So it's going to look for versions of applications that could be in need of an update because a vulnerability was discovered, or libraries like OpenSSH, where you can have these CVEs listed or exposing vulnerabilities. You can also see how these can be reproduced. This is a continuous process. It keeps track. You can see keeps track of every change you do. If you do an update and there's another vulnerability has been discovered, it's going to be announced here, and you can actually address it if needed. That's part of the vulnerability scanner is, again, CVEs and CWEs. Another interesting one that you can see here, and that's another way how Wallarm is going to protect, is active threat verification. And as you can probably know about this famous attack, Log4j, this is how it has been confirmed and discovered. Adi talked about it briefly during his presentation. Let's go more into detail about that. So this is the initial attack from the hacker. So Wallarm is going to take the initial attack, is going to reuse that intelligence coming from the hacker trying to attack a specific base URI token, and of course the attack, this is a SQL injection. Now that could be anything, could be any of the OWASP top 10, could be SQL injection, RCs, cross-site scripting. It's just a malicious payload, right? So Wallarm take this initial attack coming from the hacker, and is going to add variations of that attack. So all these variations you see here, they have been added by Wallarm to look for vulnerabilities. So that's exactly what a hacker is going to do. Is going to try once and try to change and modify the payloads until something is discovered in terms of vulnerabilities. Wallarm is doing the same against a production environment. If you want to do it, we can point it to a staging or dev environment. And in this particular case, Log4j was confirmed and discovered in the system. The last piece of technology we're using is passive detection. If I look for that one in specific, you will see this specific vulnerability. At that point, with this technology, Wallarm is listening to all the responses back from the application. What the application is returning back to the client. What you don't want to be leaking or exposing is password databases, password accounts, SQL errors, revealing your SQL structure that could be used against you with a SQL attack. So by looking at all the responses back, Wallarm is able to filter out and look for vulnerabilities, at that point. Perfect. So that's related to our 3 ways we protect the application. Now going to the deep inspection, this is something that Adi brought up during his presentation, is how Wallarm is able to analyze for every request incoming into the system. Wallarm is acting as a proxy, is analyzing every single element of the request, URI, header, and body of the request. And you can see it here, for example, I take this example and you can see the payload that triggered the attack. In this case was a path traversal attack. You can see the source IP and the error code. This is in monitoring mode, you will receive at 200. 403 means has been stopped by Wallarm. Your application never saw that request, was protected at the node level with Wallarm. Wallarm is inspecting the URI, header, and the request. Is able to parse and understand the structure of the request. So this is a REST request. Wallarm supports gRPC, GraphQL, WebSockets, REST and SOAP. So like Adi mentioned, this doesn't work with regex. It works in a way where it provide context and able to parse modern protocols like the ones I mentioned. You can see the attack was actually embedded in this field in this REST API call. The attacks we are looking for is all these attacks coming into your APIs and web services. All these attacks are analyzed in real time as they come, as they go through Wallarm. Perfect. So now let's move into rules. I want to talk to rules because this is one of the main things when dealing with complex or advanced security needs. When you think about a WAF that will require a static rule set that you import from the marketplace, or you have to maintain a rule set from 1 to 10 and you have to version, it becomes really complex. And if they're based on regex, it's really hard to maintain, even impossible when you need advanced security needs. Wallarm has an engine that will actually auto-create that rule set for you and take that work from you and make sure the security and the rule set is generated automatically. One of the things, exceptions to the rules, once you are in monitoring, let's say you want to onboard a new application, let's say in staging, that hasn't built yet the profile of the application, then you can actually go and apply rules. The rules are pretty flexible. If you want to do apply any rules, so you can apply at any level of the request. Just show you an example here. You can actually set a filtration mode, for example, monitoring for that specific application, which is in staging. Wait for 7 days to train the system by telling this is a false positive. The system will reconfigure and create a new rule set for that. So these are the rule sets. You can also use it to add virtual patches, mask specific field that you don't want it to make it available to the cloud. That's something you can do with the rule sets. Another features are triggers. This actually, we're reusing all the security events coming into Wallarm, and you can actually trigger actions on them. So for example, if you have a authentication endpoint, login endpoint that you want to protect, specific path, and you don't want anyone trying more than 30 requests over 30 seconds, because that will represent a brute force attack. Then you add a reaction, you can mark it as a brute force attack. And what you can do is add a reaction. That reaction is to mark that IP for 4 hours. So this person trying to go over 30 seconds, over the last 30 seconds, will be in a blacklist for 4 hours. You can define the time where you want to this specific user to be blocked for 5 minutes, 15 minutes, etc. The other integration point, if you want to have a specific day where you release a new product and you are expecting or be susceptible to an attack, you have 1,000 attack vectors per day. Then at that point, you can send a notification, for example, to email, PagerDuty, or send it to a SIEM like Splunk or Elasticsearch. We don't have the integration. You can always use webhook. Perfect. So let me go over the dashboard here, which the dashboard contains kind of an overview, everything happening in the system from a security perspective. You see in blue, you see all the requests coming into the system, good and bad. In red, you see the requests with malicious payloads. In red, you see the incidents detected by vulnerabilities like Log4j. Here, you can organize your applications based on ID, and you can have your dev environment, production environment, or specific apps like checkout, or in my case, I wanted to organize per API. You can see the incidents, hits, and trends. You can see the top attacks as they have been discovered, related to OWASP top 10 web and API. And you also can see the country code where they're coming from. If the information is available, you also see the data centers. Perfect. The last thing I want to talk is about whitelists, blacklists, and gray lists. You can block IPs. If you cannot do business with certain countries, you can mark it here. You have whitelists if you want to authorize certain IPs to go directly into your application without any limitation. And gray lists, we have a concept of 2 modes. You have a blocking mode that will block per IP, and gray list will block based on per session or per malicious request. Perfect. So this is the end of the demo. I hope it was useful for you. Thank you so much. I'll give it back to Adi.
Cool. Thank you, Alex. So next we want to do a Q&A. One more slide before the Q&A I want to share with you, and these are kind of the takeaways, right? The things that if you don't remember anything, this is what we want you to take away from this webinar. First of all is asset management, right? You can't protect what you're not aware. So you can do API and app discovery, accurate detection. We support all the protocols and we do deep packet inspection, request and response. And next one is low TCO. So detection and mitigation all done in one solution. And there's also automated rule sets. And then lastly is the global scale. You can deploy on Lumen Global Edge Network, as well as public and private clouds. You know how to get a hold of us. If you have any questions, reach out to us directly or obviously through our websites. And Melissa, take it away with the Q&A.
Thank you, everyone. I am not seeing any Q&A yet, but let me just double check. Does not look like we have any questions at this time. So I would like to thank everyone again for taking the time and joining us today. Thank you again to Rob and Alex and Adi, and we hope to see you on the next webinar.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.